Hello, everybody. Jose Rodriguez back again. Hot day today. Air conditioner blower is going, and you can hear it probably. Let me move this slightly over toward me. Today, in fact, three times today, people reported the blinking lights situation on a Canon printer. What could that possibly be? Well, as you know, you have an upper power button and then a lower, what they call the pause or paper advance button. Also, it is used if you want to, say, cancel a job sometimes. But anyway, what will happen is this: you possibly begin to print, and probably you haven't printed for a while. You will, instead of listening for, say, maybe a pre-print cleaning cycle beginning to take place, you won't hear anything. And when you walk over to the printer, you see blinking lights, alternating lights, top and bottom, top and bottom, top and bottom, 10 times. And then you get a pause, and then the cycle begins again, and nothing is happening. The printhead assembly has never even moved. And so, how are you going to approach this? Well, if you look that up, it will say that it is a B200 error. And what exactly is a B200 error? It's one of the most vague errors that ever occurs with a Canon printer. Remember that the printhead is user replaceable. It has to do with a communication failure between the printhead and the printer. And the printhead communicates with the printer via all of those little connectors back there. They're just basically, I think, gold plated little connectors. And they actually mate with little pins that are located in your printhead carriage. So when you install one of these printheads and you lock it in place, it's going to then come into contact with those little connectors. Now, as a matter of maintenance, and this really has not been proven to be an actual preventative measure, but you should clean those contacts with some good quality electronic contact cleaner. And what I do is I use one of those makeup pads. I don't have one here. Here we go, right here. You use that to remove your makeup every night. Apply a little bit of that and clean that surface thoroughly, and then pop it back in. Now, you don't have to do that, but say once every 6 months. And also clean the pins that you will then be able to access when you remove the printhead. Once the B200 error occurs, many times you cannot move the carriage to the central position in order for you to replace the printhead, which is what you will have to do. The B200, 99% of the time, means you need a new printhead. It happened to me with the Pro 100 months ago. I have printheads. I'm just too lazy to replace it. And at this point, I'm having too much fun with my other printers to worry about reviving my Pro 100. It's over 11 years old at this point, friends. So, yeah, keep in mind that that error occurs due to several things. Somehow, the communication between the printhead and the printer diminishes with time, whether it is maybe corrosion or whatever could possibly happen to prevent all of those little contact points from communicating with the little pins that are in the carriage, and as well as other issues internally, possibly with the printhead itself. It's not just contacts, it's also the printhead beginning to fail because, simply put, it is a user replaceable item. I wish it was cheaper, but it is not. It will run you several $100s to replace a Pro 100 printhead or a Pro 10 printhead. And a Pro 1000 printhead, forget it, 400 bills easily. So Eventually these print heads will burn out. And I use the term burn because they are thermal type print heads which utilize heat in those little microscopic compartments that holds the required amount of ink for one droplet. That ink is heated and it expands, of course, when it heats, and it is expelled. That's how the droplets are generated. Epson print heads use an electric piezo technology, which is more like a pressurized type system where it pressurizes the droplet and it runs cold. Canon printers require heat to generate those droplets. Remember the term bubble jet? That was initially coined by Canon, early Canon printers. So eventually, because of this heat that is required, it will develop some residual junk from the ink as it is heated, expelled. It just begins to accumulate. It would be like you never cleaning out your frying pan. Imagine that. So that is expelled via cleaning cycles, whether they occur like on the Pro 1000 Super Smart printer. It does it when it needs to do it, and it senses that it needs to do it, and it does that cleaning cycle to remove that residual buildup, and also to make sure that your nozzles, of course, are clear for you to print and get a perfect result. Now, eventually, even if nozzles are being sort of worn out, which they are on thermal print heads, eventually some nozzles will become damaged. They cannot be cleared. Maybe they will lose the ability to communicate electronically with the printer. And so they are replaced by what? Redundant nozzles. The higher end Canon printers have more nozzles included in that printhead than are actually being used at any one time. So you always have spares waiting. And so once a spare is required, because one nozzle is beginning to malfunction, it is replaced on the fly by that so-called redundant nozzle, and then you begin to print. You really don't know it even occurred. It just continues printing, and you're happy as a lark that your Canon printer is producing, continually producing wonderful results. Now, at some point, you run out of nozzles. There are no more nozzles to be replaced. The ones that have been replaced are now inactivated, so they cannot be brought back to life, even if it's just a issue with clogging and nothing electronically. They cannot be brought back to life. Well, there is a way, but we cannot do it. Okay, so what happens if the reason that those nozzles are clogged is because you're just not printing enough? And that happens. It's a conundrum because printing is expensive, so we are required to print a lot to keep those nozzles clean. But by doing so, we have to spend a lot of money, and we think that it's going to wear out the printer. But in reality, what it's doing is keeping the printer healthy. But at the same time, keeping it healthy costs a lot of money. You see what I'm getting at? It is a conundrum. So I am using my Pro 1000, my Pro 10 as much as I possibly can at this point. So even if I am not printing any photos, I will at least run one of those purge images generated in QImage, and that way at least it is exercising those 12 channels. Every time I do that, whether I'm actually printing a image that I want to put on my wall or not, I'm printing something daily, a nozzle check, a purge image, whatever. And then I will do a nozzle check just to see how the diagnostic procedure basically that will tell you that all my nozzles are actually printing, nothing is missing. Therefore, knock on wood, everything will be hunky-dory. Well, unbeknownst to me, that printer is replacing nozzles as needed. I have no clue when a nozzle is replaced. You see? Now, ink flow on Canon printers, and we'll stick with Canon printers because at this point it's the only thermal printers out there that are mostly used for photography, as well as some office work, but mostly for photography, especially the pro category of these printers. So if I am refilling my cartridges, which is the only way to keep your costs down. That does not mean that you are forgiven for, not printing at least, every couple of days, preferably daily. Wow, am I scaring you? I hope so. So preferably daily on a Canon printer, especially a high-end printer. One that is always doing pre-print cleanings to ensure that you're not upset with the results. And by doing that, it is wasting ink. But when it is printing and if you are refilling, make sure you learn to do the process correctly, because the last thing in the world you want to do is reduce the ability of those cartridges to deliver the required amount, volume, capacity, whatever you want to call it, that it expects to have traveling through its print heads. That's the only way that keeps that print head cool. And by cool, I mean it's not overheating beyond a certain level. That operating temperature has to be maintained. It's like if your thermostat in your automobile for your coolant system goes haywire and it does not open, your engine will overheat because the coolant is not allowed to flow because that valve remains closed. Now, with ink on Canon printers, as liquid ink is passing through the printhead, even though it is being overheated and then expelled, at least that liquid carries that heat out with it. Okay. Otherwise, within a couple of days, you would burn out your Canon printhead. Simple as that. So you got to make sure that your cartridges, if you want to refill, you got to make sure that they are refilled correctly. And there are ways to test the ink flow. With something like this, there's no issue. You just drill a hole, add the ink. This is simply a container. You're not affecting anything else. But cartridges that you have to modify to refill, such as these, you got to do that job correctly and you got to refill them correctly. I'm not going to get into that right now because it's a long subject matter. Now, with these style cartridge, such as the ones for the Pro 10, it's very simple. You take the cap off and you dribble ink in, and eventually that port will become wet. That means that that bag inside is filled with ink. Now, these have a pleated bag. The other ones that I just showed you have a sponge, and that presents all kinds of problems if you don't do the process of modifying the cartridge, flushing it, and then refilling at the proper time and correctly. You will affect your ink flow. And the only way to fix that is to start it all over again with OEM cartridges. Just recently, a user, hey, my black is causing banding. He said, I'm getting prints that are showing banding, black and white prints. And I said, well, let me see your print. Let me see your photograph. And he sent one. And I said, well, I need to see your nozzle check. Learn how to diagnose. Learn what causes certain problems. Immediately I saw the issue, the black channel. It's a Pro 300. And it has the same style nozzle check as the Pro 1000. The Pro quality level printers from Canon's now produce that Pro 1000 style nozzle check, with just a bunch of crisscrosses. Well, some of those crisscrosses were missing. I said, easy, it's your black channel. Oh, but I've done deep cleaning cycles galore. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. First of all, stop using both or global cleanings and only concentrate on the group that contains that ink, the black ink. That way you will not be wasting ink on the other 4 colors unnecessarily, because it will just waste ink on all 8 channels. The same thing with a Pro 10 with 10 channels. If you do a global one, it'll waste ink on all 10 channels when you just need to clean one. So then I said, wait a minute. Are you by any chance not using OEM? And he said, yeah, you're right. I'm using compatibles. Well, yeah, that's the issue right there. The sponges are horrible. They are not good. OEM sponges are super high quality and have 2 layers, different densities. Okay? The reason for that is to feed that external port as much ink as possible so it can be delivered to the printhead. The single density sponges that don't even fit well in the cartridge. I have taken some of them apart. It's just horrendous. They really don't provide the ink flow necessary for your printhead to have sufficient ink, not only to print with, but also to maintain that temperature correctly at the proper operating temperature, that is. You see? So compatible cartridge, please, folks. I know it's cheap. I know it allows you to print, at a low cost, but it's crap. Don't use them. And if you even think about using refillable Chinese cartridges, they're just as bad. They use the same crappy sponge, single layer, nothing really great about it. Okay? They work and they don't work. It just depends on the settings of the moon and where the planets are aligned or not. You see, it's that much of a chance. You really don't have the reliability that a set of OEM properly modified, flush and dried, and you refill them properly at the proper time, which is before you run out of ink in that liquid chamber. That's below the low warning. You fill them all up. Get 2 sets of those. Get the holders from Rudy Hallamum so you can keep track of your fill-ups. Yes, you need these accessories to make your refilling adventure life attempt successful continually. Otherwise, it's going to fail. And failure when it comes to Canon printers is bad. Thermal printheads cannot handle it, cannot handle the abuse, okay, of reducing your ink flow, for instance, or say not printing enough to maintain that flow rate clean. Yeah, it's not like Epson. Epson is cold firing printheads and they can take abuse. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. They're not going to become damaged because you get some clogs. Okay, they can be clean eventually, after many cleaning cycles, but that's not going to harm your printhead, and it'll last the life of your printer even after mechanical issues that have nothing to do with the printhead. Epson printheads are different, but Canon printheads are made specifically for you, the user, to be able to replace them. And you need to increase the lifespan of that printhead by simply doing a few things. Print often. Make sure that if you're refilling, you refill properly so you maintain the ink flow at the proper amount, and that ensures that your operating temperature will remain within that safety line or safety guard, if you will. And that way, it will last as long as it can last. Like I said, mine was 10 years old. 10 and a half years old, and right now I'm waiting for me to get the inspiration to install a new printhead on it. I would have to prepare some cartridges for it, of course. But anyway, that should kind of give you an idea of what could possibly happen if you're not careful, like this gentleman who had an issue with that black channel, and on a very new printer. And of course, Pro 300, what are you doing installing compatible cartridges on a Pro 300? Yeah, in my world, that's against the law. You just don't do that, okay? You can refill those cartridges. Yes, you cannot reset the chips, but you can disable the chips and refill those cartridges properly with good third-party ink, not that cheap stuff they load on these compatible cartridges that you buy for, 20 cents on the dollar. Yeah, that's how cheap they are. All right, that is it. Enough scare tactics. I hope you guys enjoy this. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. And as always, happy printing, happy refilling. Bye-bye, everybody. Until the next video.